The Stars and Ghosts of Manhattan's Hotel Chelsea. Written, produced, and directed by Reverend Dr Dikki Mullen. In this video, Dr. Mullen will look over various individuals' horoscopes who had untoward experiences at this hotel, and some of them have in turn been accused of being ghosts that haunt the place. In this picture, you will see hallways with ghostly images, which have been claimed to have been seen by people who have stayed at the hotel. Dr. Mullen would like you to subscribe to her YouTube channel, where she has more than 120 videos of related kinds of material. Now we will hear Dr. Dikki Mullen share with us the story of the Hotel Chelsea.
I'm astrologer and paranormal investigator Dikki Mullen, talking about a very interesting site in Manhattan, New York, the Hotel Chelsea, from an astrological viewpoint. You know, places and buildings have astrology charts, not just people, and astrological influences. And Hotel Chelsea is an institution. It's been kind of a bohemian haven long before the bohemian scene opened up, and it's continued to be kind of a counterculture place right in downtown New York, downtown Manhattan. It was placed on the New York City landmark lists, and I have horoscopes for those. Astrologically, it's a little hard to pinpoint the birth date of the hotel. It was at one time the tallest building in New York City. It isn't anymore. It's dwarfed by the more recent high-rises, but it began as quite a glamorous place in the 1880s, and it was built between about 1884 and 1888. So the time frame there that we would be looking at would be the general birth date, and at that time the planet Neptune was coming to prominence. It had been discovered not long before that, and so the influences of Neptune, the planet of the mystical and the interdimensional, might kind of be doing an overview for the Chelsea Hotel. I have a horoscope here for March 15th of 1966. That was when the hotel was placed on the landmarks for New York City, and the chart here should describe some of the events that go on in the hotel. It used to be considered an inexpensive place for artists and writers to live and to work, and in fact the hotel walls are covered with artwork that they traded for rent at one time. It had fallen into disrepair, and now during the early 2000s is being renovated and reopened again, with maintaining its flavor or personality as kind of a French flavor. The hotel NYCL, New York City landmark chart, is here, and taking a look at it, well, the Pisces influence prevails in Neptune because the Sun, Chiron, and Saturn are conjunct. That indicates its survival and also an otherworldly quality. The moon represents everyday people in a chart of a place. The moon here is in Capricorn, and this is a place where those who were rather poor, who made a living by their wits or creations, often came. Venus in Aquarius shows a wide mix of different kinds of people. And Neptune in Scorpio is trining all that Pisces influence. So over and over we have the ideals of mysticism and illusion here. It's well known as a haunted place. The other chart that I have is when it became a site on the National Historic Register of Places, December 27th of 1977, the NRHP chart that we have here. And this has a Capricorn sun and an out-of-sign conjunction with Venus on the last degree of Sagittarius. and then a Mercury-Neptune conjunction in the chart. So this shows again the idea of illusion and otherworldliness. Neptune also rules people that become stars, that are a step beyond royalty and being superstars, and many of them have always been drawn to the Chelsea Hotel. Albert Einstein lived there for a while, and then also Marilyn Monroe and various other famous figures. The hotel became the site of a scandal when there was a stabbing there. A lady by the name of Nancy Spurgeon was stabbed on October the 12th, 1978. This is Nancy Spurgeon's death chart in one of the rooms, which recently has been seen as the haunting of her spirit in that room. And she was stabbed by Sid Vicious, who would hang out with a man by that name. But Nancy loved him, and I don't know if he loved her to death or what, but it kind of was a point of scandal at the Hotel Chelsea. This chart shows Mars and Uranus conjunct at 15 degrees of Scorpio. Those of you who have studied the degrees of the zodiac will know that's sometimes called the accursed degree of an accursed sign. And the moon was full in Pisces and waxing toward nearly full, and it is opposing Saturn, which is the planet of parameters. We have a Sun, Pluto, Mercury conjunction in Libra in this chart, and I'm sorry, this is the waxing gibbous phase right before the full moon, but it had a full moon effect. And the Libra stellium shows legalities. There was a lot of trouble with illegal things going on and drug dealing at the hotel at that time. Jupiter is in Leo in this chart, which shows it continued to maintain a sort of glamour despite everything. There's the natal horoscope of a person by the name of Stanley Bard, and he was called the face of the Chelsea Hotel for many, many years before he retired to Florida, like so many New Yorkers do. I'm kind of smiling because we know so many of them from New York here in Florida. But Stanley Bard could decide who would be admitted to the hotel during its heyday, who would be favorable living on the same floor to whom. He was known to be very charming and diplomatic and in charge of things. He was born June 16th of 1934 in New York City, and he inherited the job from his father, who had been working at the hotel before that. So there's a real thread of different people connected with the hotel. Stanley Bard's chart shows a Gemini sun. He could be all things to all people. There's a saying in astrology, if you don't like the Gemini you're with, just wait a few minutes, they'll turn into someone else. And that was certainly true of him. His moon is in Leo. The moon is, again, connections with others, the personality, and he was able to connect with all sorts of famous musicians who drifted through the hotel, and different characters and artists. Jackson Pollock, Salvador Dali, all of them had residency there at different times. This chart for Stanley Bard has Mercury, the dispositor of his Gemini sun, conjunct Pluto, which is very good at uncovering truths and discovering secrets. He had the sun trine Jupiter in this birth chart. Jupiter represents growth, healing, good luck. Jupiter is in Libra, so he was able to survive and manage the hotel successfully in a lot of the stories, and a lot of its survival as an entity in an ever-changing city ties in with him. His birth chart also shows a grand trine in the air signs of the zodiac. Jupiter in Libra, his natal Saturn in Aquarius, and then of course his Sun, but also his Mars and Chiron in Gemini. This shows a very astute mind, and also the ability to be a little bit airy and not be pulled down by things too earthy, which, considering all of the different characters who've lived in the hotel, things they did there, the way they decorated their rooms, just very bohemian and different. He was probably the only manager who could have facilitated all of that successfully and brought it off and brought it together. And again, maybe the spirit of the hotel was pervasive here. This is a death chart for Dylan Thomas, who was a very famous resident there. He actually died at a hospital nearby, but he became ill suddenly and perished after he had lived at the hotel. And it's just interesting to look at his chart in terms of the type of person who might have been attracted there. Dylan Thomas was born November 9th of 1953. Now that's not Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan also lived at the hotel for a while. Totally different person, but people tend to get them mixed up. Dylan Thomas, of course, was the Welsh poet and playwright. He was a Scorpio with the Sun conjunct Saturn in Scorpio, which showed that kind of gloomy, morose quality that he had. And he had his Scorpio placements were square Pluto in Leo, and he had a mutual reception between his Sun in Scorpio and Pluto in Leo. Those of you who are dedicated astrologers will know that that's very significant for him living and dying in connection with that environment. Venus conjunct Neptune at his birth showed his ability as a poet and playwright, and his general genius and melancholy. Moon in Sagittarius shows his affinity for the United States because, of course, he was born in Wales and was related to Wales. And all of this tied in with his residency just shows a little bit of insight into one of the many characters at this New York City landmark. The next time you're in Manhattan, do try to stop by the hotel. The address has 3 2s in it, 222, which is interesting because numbers in addresses often show places that are portals that lead to other dimensions. Are portals real? We'll explore that idea in a future video, but there are times when places seem to be out of sync or on a different level. It happens immediately and vanishes immediately, and many feel Hotel Chelsea is a portal. All of the 2s there in a row relate to emotions, being receptive and responsive. The 2 relates to the moon. It has a domestic home, kind of a member of the group mentality to it. And those who resided at the hotel did see themselves as members of a special community, a unique community. It'll be interesting to see as the hotel reopens in a totally different light how much of the energy stays with that land. I don't think it'll be totally lost in any way. At any rate, this is Dikki Jo in downtown Orlando, wishing you safe and interesting travels.
Reverend Dr. Dikki Jo Mullen, astrologer, psychic, and parapsychologist. Dr. Mullen provides the following services: astrology, psychic, rune, and tarot card readings, face-to-face and Zoom readings and seances, and webinars and face-to-face presentations. Thank you for watching. Reverend Dr. Dikki Jo Mullen can be contacted at her skymaiden@juno.com email address. She also has a Facebook page, which she invites you to view, and her WordPress site, where she has additional resources.